If you think you are too weak, you are too weak. If you anticipate failure, believe me, you're going to fail.
For decades, the life and legacy of Aretha Franklin, one of the greatest voices in music history, have been subjects of fascination. However, alongside her incredible rise to fame, there are dark and troubling aspects of her personal life that have intrigued fans and critics alike. One of the most disturbing and enduring questions surrounding Aretha's life is whether her father, Reverend Clarence Leon Franklin, was responsible for fathering her first child. Though the Reverend was widely recognized for his powerful preaching and his influence as one of the most famous figures in the gospel music world, his personal life has remained shrouded in scandal. Various accounts reveal that he was far more than just a revered preacher. He was a man whose promiscuous behavior left a trail of devastation in its wake. Aretha Franklin's relationships with men were always complicated, and this can largely be attributed to her tumultuous childhood and the mistreatment she endured at the hands of those closest to her. Aretha's difficult relationship with men started early. By the time she was 18, Aretha had already given birth to 2 children, and at just 19, she married Ted White. However, Ted was far from the loving partner Aretha had hoped for. Instead of offering support, Ted took advantage of Aretha's rising stardom. He was reportedly a man who had numerous affairs with other women, singers, escorts, and others, and used Aretha's fame to further his own interests. Despite this, Aretha tried to maintain the image of a perfect marriage. She clung to the fairy tale notion of a loving partnership, refusing to acknowledge the reality of her relationship with Ted, despite rumors of his violent behavior. It wasn't until years later, when the tension became unbearable, that Aretha finally ended her marriage to Ted. But this was only one chapter in her life that was marred by abuse and betrayal. And unfortunately, it didn't end there. The most disturbing aspect of Aretha's life story is the abuse she experienced from her father, Reverend Clarence Leon Franklin. While he was a well-known preacher with a powerful voice that resonated across the nation, his actions behind closed doors were far from godly. Revered for his gospel singing and spiritual teachings, Reverend Franklin's personal life, however, tells a much darker story. Allegations of his sexual promiscuity were widespread, and reports from those who knew him suggest that he was involved in inappropriate relationships with young girls within his congregation. Though he was adored by his followers and seen as a deeply spiritual man, his personal actions contradicted his public persona. In his biography, Singing in a Strange Land, it's revealed that Reverend Franklin's inappropriate actions were not limited to adults. He was accused of engaging with a 12-year-old girl from his congregation. As a result, the Franklin family was forced to leave town, eventually settling in Detroit. What many people do not know is that the child from this situation actually became a part of Aretha's life. She was even mentioned in Aretha's obituary as her sister, and this young girl was in attendance at Aretha's funeral, sitting with the family, which further highlighted the complicated and troubling dynamics within the Franklin household. As the years went on, more details about Reverend Franklin's behavior began to emerge. Reports suggest that the Reverend had a reputation as a ladies' man, with women from his congregation often throwing themselves at him. According to Aretha's sister, Irma Franklin, the family was well aware of their father's infidelities and had grown accustomed to them. Irma recounted in David Ritz's biography, Respect, the life of Aretha Franklin, how, even as children, they could see how women would literally throw themselves at their father. She later understood that Reverend Franklin often took advantage of these women's advances. Aretha herself alluded to this in an interview with NPR, revealing that as children, she and her siblings saw firsthand how women in the church were openly attracted to their father. Aretha noted that some of the women would sit in the front pews, wearing short skirts and revealing clothing, seemingly trying to catch the Reverend's attention. The sexual atmosphere surrounding the church was apparently not just limited to women, as it was rumored that Reverend Franklin was involved with both men and women. This was something Ray Charles, the legendary singer, touched on in his autobiography Brother Ray, where he recounted his own observations of the loose and unrestrained behavior within the church. He even mentioned how people would engage in sexual encounters without hesitation, with no one really caring about the moral boundaries that should have been in place. Reverend Franklin's promiscuity also had an even darker side. He was reportedly friends with Reverend James Cleveland, a closeted gay preacher who was involved in the sexual exploitation of young men in his congregation. Cleveland was eventually revealed to be responsible for spreading AIDS among several of his young male followers before dying from AIDS-related complications in 1991. This adds another layer of darkness to the already murky life of Reverend Franklin and the toxic environment in which Aretha was raised. Beyond the rumors of sexual indiscretions, there were also allegations that Reverend Franklin exposed Aretha to certain adult behaviors at a young age. In fact, there were whispers that Reverend Franklin may have even fathered Aretha's first child. While there is no concrete evidence to support this claim, it has been speculated for years that Aretha's first child may have been the result of an incestuous relationship with her father. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence cited by those who believe this theory is the fact that Aretha's first child was named Clarence Franklin after her father. This has led many to believe that she was hinting at the true identity of her child's father. In addition to these disturbing rumors, Aretha's life was further marked by tragedy. Her mother, Barbara Siggers Franklin, left Reverend Franklin when Aretha was just 6 years old, citing his infidelity and abusive behavior. Barbara's departure devastated the Franklin children, particularly Aretha, who was very close to her mother. After Barbara left, Aretha reportedly cried for days, struggling to cope with the loss of her mother. Barbara's death, at the young age of 34, was also shrouded in mystery. Official reports state that she died from a heart attack, but rumors suggest that her death may have been the result of a car accident that was allegedly orchestrated by her estranged husband, Reverend Franklin. While Aretha's childhood was filled with emotional pain, the rumors surrounding her first child have also been a focal point of public speculation. Fans have long questioned whether Reverend Franklin was the father of Aretha's first child, especially when they consider that Aretha named her firstborn Clarence.
This, combined with various hints dropped in Aretha's biopic, led many to wonder about the true nature of her relationship with her father. One particularly telling scene in the biopic shows a young Aretha being introduced to a room full of famous
adults by her preacher father, who then asks her to perform for them. Later in the film, a man enters her bedroom and suggests that he will be her boyfriend. While the biopic does not outright state that her father was responsible for impregnating her, many fans have speculated that it may be implied. After Aretha's death, 3 handwritten wills were discovered in her home. In one of these wills, she referred to Edward Jordan Sr. as the father of her first child, but she was adamant that Jordan had never contributed to Clarence Franklin's welfare. Even though this document further complicates the mystery, it didn't erase the suspicion that Reverend Franklin may have fathered Aretha's first child. While there are those who believe that Sam Cooke may have been the father of Aretha's first child, particularly considering the rumors of their relationship when Aretha was just 12 years old, the exact details remain unclear. Aretha herself hinted in a documentary about Sam Cooke that her father may have interrupted what could have been an intimate moment between her and the soul legend. Aretha described a time when she was alone with Sam in his hotel room talking about the music industry, only to be interrupted by her father calling out her name. In the end, we may never know for certain who fathered Aretha's first child. But one thing is clear: Aretha's life was defined by pain, abuse, and the complexities of family. The legacy of Reverend C.L. Franklin, her father, remains one of the darkest chapters in her life story. Whether or not he crossed the line with his daughter, the allegations surrounding his promiscuity, and the environment he created for Aretha are undeniable. What do you think? Was Reverend Franklin's promiscuity more than just rumors? And did it extend to his own daughter? Do you believe he may have fathered her first child? Share your thoughts in the comments below.